So it's my pleasure to welcome our next presenter, Kathy Nelson. Kathy is the Caregiver Support Training Specialist for Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services and brings 20 years of experience teaching caregivers self-reliant and creative approaches to caregiving. In addition to caregiving in her own family, Kathy has authored various caregiver training manuals, including the Caregiver Academy curriculum and the Managing Care Guide. So Kathy, if you're ready, I'll turn the time over to you.
So our theme today is one that's near and dear to my heart because it's one of the things that our caregivers face most frequently as they try to care for parents, children, the sandwich generation, all the different levels. So it's caregiver burnout, but it's managing sparks and rebuilding energy, because one of the things that I love to work with is finding ways that each one of us can have the power to make change occur regardless of the situation that we're in. We can't change a lot of things in life, and there's a lot of things that as caregivers we're not in control of. But there are many things that we can still do to give us that sense of control and to be part of everything that we need to be. So just to let you know, I am with the Caregiver Support Program. There is a Caregiver Support Program in all the AAAs in Utah. If you happen to be listening from another state, some states have the Caregiver Support Program and some do not. I found that out as a caregiver, as I traveled to a different state to attend to an aging family member and realized they didn't have that program there. So I explained what it was and the success we were having with it, and even asked that state if they could possibly look into it in the future for their caregivers. So it's just something you'll need to explore by state to see if that state happens to have accepted it and be offering that program. But we do offer it throughout the full state of Utah. So I just wanted you to know that. So caregiver burnout is a really unique thing. And what I'd like to do first is ask you this question, and then I'm going to stop sharing and look at your chat channel. It says, what does a person showing signs of burnout look and sound like? So I just want you to kind of describe to me, I'm going to go to the chat channel, describe to me what someone with burnout in your mind looks like, acts like, anything. Let's just see what you come up with. Grouchy, I'm liking that word. Depressed, okay. Tired, depressed, anxiety. They're tired and can't think very well, okay. Irritated, frustrated, flustered, withdrawn, guilty, I love that. Avoidance, hopeless, overwhelmed, exhausted, okay. Mumbling, foggy-headed, oh, that's a great description. Quiet. They can cry easily, that's true. Their emotions can get overwhelmed and they can flow out in many directions. Sometimes they seem the same as usual, that's true. They can mask things and hide pretty well. Loss, boy, you've got some really great comments here. I can't do this anymore, unable to cope, frustrated, blank look, no emotions, lack of concentration, okay, and feeling no one else cares. I think that's a really great start to make as we get into this conversation, because it's important to have our mind around what we're going through. So if you look at this, I want to approach this whole subject today from a little bit different angle. A lot of times when we talk about burnout, we talk about the types of things that you can do to maybe overcome it, but we only talk usually about coping skills. So we will talk about things like learning to meditate, guided imagery, which are all beautiful coping skills. But if we don't understand how this whole thing gets started, if we're living in an environment that naturally promotes burnout, and how to change that environment so that those coping skills have a chance, then we run into a lot of big concerns with not being able to address our burnout. And I want you to know that I've put these slides together in a way today so that if you are a senior caring for a spouse, or if you are a younger child caring for an adult, or if you're a sandwich generation, if you're a professional caregiver, it won't matter which angle you're coming from today. I wanted to be able to address all of you. So let me just go into this next one. The World Health Organization actually has an international classification for burnout, and I think it's really important that we share this today, because I wanted you to understand what it is exactly, because I'll have some people call me on the phone and say, my doctor's diagnosed me with burnout. And there actually is no medical classification for burnout. And I think that's something we need to really understand together. Burnout is actually a syndrome. So it's a group of symptoms, and it's conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And that's an important system right there. It's stress that's not been successfully managed. And they now know that it's not just in the workplace, but it can be any consistent workflow that can cause this. So that's why caregivers are now considered part of this. It was discovered first in the caregiver world amongst first responders and others. But burnout refers specifically to phenomena in an occupational context. That's how they look at it from the medical field. So if we realize that this is a syndrome or it's a group of symptoms, kind of helps us break down what symptoms am I looking for, how do they occur, how can I minimize all of these things. So the Center for Disease Control in 2022, its latest research, reports that 46% of care professionals are experiencing symptoms of burnout, and 53% of family caregivers are reporting declining health related to caring for others. So that can be a pretty tough thing. So I want to talk first about the set of conditions it takes to create burnout, because you may find those to be all the way around you. And so if you are living in a set of conditions that is naturally creating burnout, it means that we have to work on those conditions, not just the coping skills that we might want for this situation. So I want to report or point out this research by Dr. Christina Maslach and Dr. Laurie Santos. They're with Berkeley and Yale specifically, but they have come up with, in their research, in the way they present, in a very understandable way. And that is, if there is a set of conditions, meaning there's three things that they've found. One, if our values are mismatched to where we work or the caregiving role that we're playing, meaning I didn't choose this, I don't want to be here, I'm only here because it pays better than the other job I really love. If we have that value mismatch in any way, that sets us up for a natural slide into burnout. The other two are, if we increase an unbearable workload too quickly, we don't learn how to manage it well, and we're not good at setting boundaries and other things, then that increase in that unbearable workload, let's say, I think a lot of us have seen in the workforce, especially in the medical fields and first responders and others, there's not always enough staff to go around. So if you're from the professional side of care today, if you're looking at this and saying, yeah, the workload is strategically increased, it just doesn't stop. Every time someone leaves, the work is split up and there's more to do per fewer people and things like that. So if that's your condition in your current workload, that is also setting up for burnout. And then the third one is real or perceived unfairness. And this can be in many ways. This is something I hear here in our caregiver support program a lot. There are 4 children in a family, but only one wants to serve mom and dad. The others find it just too stressful, and they're just not able to cope with providing care for another individual. Those are natural things to caregiving. But if that real unfairness in your mind exists, or even if you're perceiving something as unfair, then this can give you into that condition where burnout can happen quite easily. So if you have 1 or 3 of those, and you have been feeling burnout, there is a real reason for this, because it is developing around you quite a bit. But we'll talk about how to get through that. And then there's a set of behaviors we use when we look at symptoms. One is emotional exhaustion, and it's not your normal emotional exhaustion. This is even if I went on 2 weeks of vacation and I put my feet in the sand and swam in the ocean and ignored all work and all aspects of my life for 2 full weeks. Even then, if I came back to work, I would still be burned out. Even a vacation like that couldn't touch it. That's the kind of exhaustion that we're talking about. So then the other piece is cynicism. If we have a deepening distrust and mistrust, and both of these words are very important. The deepening distrust means I, through personal experience, have seen reasons to become cynical. And then the other one is I mistrust because the things I'm hearing from others have also deepened what I myself have experienced. So if you start to get both of those, and that cynicism is always there, and no matter what anyone shares with you or no matter what anyone wants to do, it won't go away because you've got that building deeper and deeper. That's the kind of behaviors we're looking for to tell us whether someone is headed down the path to burnout. And then there's this other one that's really powerful in all of our lives, and that's that personal ineffectiveness. Personal ineffectiveness is things like I can read a paper, but I have no idea what I read. The comprehension doesn't come through with what I'm reading. I can't get up and mop my floor because it's just too much for me. I can get to work so that I can pay my bills, but when I come home, I can't function. I can't clean the house. I find it too difficult to even shower half the time. You start to develop those kinds of behaviors. That's what we're talking about with burnout. So there's a really important part of this with burnout that I had never even considered before until I started studying this much deeper. And that is when the conditions are right, the match is lit, period. You start into some form or level of burnout. But the part I had never considered was that burnout is not determined by where the flame is on the match, but rather if the symptoms and behaviors appear and begin to impact a person's life and a person's ability to maintain effectiveness or respond in a healthy manner. We are all very different people. We have had very different experiences in our past. Some of us have had trauma, which means when we go through the lighting of this match, we may get into burnout quicker than someone else. So it doesn't matter where the match is, because there's a lot of downward slant to burnout, a lot of deepening conditions to this. And some people don't really even understand that they're getting to burnout until there is so little left on the match that you can't hold on to it, and they are basically crumbling and they don't really understand how they got there. Other people will realize burnout from the minute the match is lit. So we need to be really patient and kind with each other, because if you've gone through a lot worse things than the person standing next to you, but they're falling apart on the same level you are, there's a reason for that. Maybe they haven't developed that thick skin throughout life and gone through some of the stuff you have. So we need to understand that we can't judge people. If they have the conditions and those symptoms, then they're going to have burnout, and it won't matter at what level. Burnout simply is what it is. So that was just really eye-opening for me when I really first started studying this whole system. So another thing that we need to really keep in mind with burnout is we need to have respect for whole body fatigue. Whole body fatigue is powerful. This is not like just I'm tired, I've been working out, it's a good fatigue. My muscles will increase and they will, heal in a few days and I'll be back to the gym. This is a whole different set of fatigue. And it's whole body. So let's look at the body piece. It's the physical functions. Are my 5 senses still working? Are my cells generating properly? Is my body able to process food, let me sleep, all those things? It's the physical aspect. And then we have the mind aspect, the psychological, the cognitive. Can I reason anymore? Can I still learn? Am I capable of making choices? And if that starts to go into burnout, we may not be able to. And then the moment any one of these 3 bubbles is affected by the other one, it starts to impact and really starts to accelerate the burnout. So in the spirit level is, what is my meaning in life? What is my purpose? Do I have one? Do I know what it is anymore? What are my core beliefs, my desires and my hopes for life? And do I even know what those are anymore? Or have I reached a level and a group of symptoms to where I may be crying at night because I don't even know why I get up anymore in the morning? And all 3 of these are a powerful piece and are completely impacted. They call it body, mind, and spirit most of the time, but it's also whole body fatigue when it starts to go out of whack, we'll just say. Burnout cripples the core, so the energy drive, and I'm going to show you this. There is actually an energy drive that takes place between these 3 working well. And it's a propeller that moves us forward in everything that we do, because we have enough energy to function well, because our mind is working, our body is working, our spirit is working. And even if one propeller is just a slightly bit damaged, the other two can keep it going. But in burnout, we take a hit in all three levels. And so that can make it really, really difficult. So how do we manage this path that leads to burnout? I want to share this with you from an educational perspective so that you, when you're making choices for your life and you're making choices on how to manage this path, you start thinking about what you're choosing and why. So I want to show you this funny little thing. A few years ago, I'm from the generation that they didn't have computers in high school. I saw my first computers really in college, and we learned, the very basics of computers. There was no such thing as a cell phone. That was my beginning generation with the computer. So not too many years ago, I was on the phone with a new IT technical full-time support that I'd purchased for myself so I could learn more about my computer, how it functioned, kind of move forward. And we had this gentleman that was on the phone with me, and very condescendingly, he said to me, "Ma'am, just click on the hamburger menu." And I said to him, "What in the world is the hamburger menu?" And he had to explain to me that the top of every website, and I'll just circle these, was these three little lines that look like a hamburger. You've got buns on either side and some kind of substance in the middle, right? Or they call it a menu, and that really goes back to food as well. What am I going to use to nourish my life, right? And then the cloud is even great too, because I see these three little dots in the cloud as the seeds in the cloud, that we're seeding the cloud, we're filling it with something, we're asking it for something, we're really kind of looking at that whole concept. Well, being from an educational background, I thought, man, what does that even mean, this little hamburger menu? And then I realized it was a very simple concept. It meant when I click on that, I should get more. And it didn't matter what the more was, whatever more I was looking for at the time. So I want to explain this and say, okay, if we look at the hamburger menu as an actual hamburger model, then we see that the bun and the pita or the lettuce wrap or whatever you're using to hold things together, there is in our field actual pieces for each of these things. So the bun, these are the areas that hold a person together until the real meat or substance of the situation can be addressed. And I found that in our fields and in the social service arena, in medical, everything, there are outside pieces that kind of hold us together until we can figure everything else out. So what are those in our field? They are friendly listeners, friendly callers. They are the intakes that you do. Why is an intake holding me together? Because it gives me hope that I've applied for services, and even though there might be a wait list, I'm still hopeful that eventually I will come to the top of that wait list and I'll be able to receive the services I need. And even while I'm waiting for that to take place, I know that there's this other side of the bun at the bottom. They've given me a few resources because I called in. They've given me more hotlines that I can call to hold myself together until things are better or until we get organized more. There's websites I didn't know about. And they've even encouraged me to plan more respite. And the reason I say planned respite on this level is because planned respite is really all about the joy of planning something and having hope that you're going to get to go somewhere. And that hope holds you together. I don't know about the rest of you, but just planning a vacation out 6 months from now or 5 months from now or whatever is such a joy, because that gives me something to look up and something to look forward to and, whatever. And planned respite's the same. Oh man, this week's going to be long, but I get to go to the movie next Tuesday. So these are the parts of this whole hamburger model that keep us together. Now there's the next level in, and that's the garnishes and the condiments. And so it makes it really fun because you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, what's the next level in? Maybe I still can't get into the services yet or other supports that I really need because they're not organized yet. I've still got to talk to my siblings. We've still got to hold a family meeting, but we'll eventually pull it together. But the garnish piece here is your consults, where you are consulting with siblings in family meetings. You are consulting with professionals. You are asking for a little one-on-one with your family and a professional through your employee assistance program or through any number of places. You might be calling a caregiver support program and saying, You know, we don't think we really need to do an intake yet, but we would really like to sit down with a case manager and just have a one-on-one meeting for an hour to say, are we even going in the right direction? Or are there resources that might be better than the ones we know about? The second piece is support groups. Support groups are lovely, and they're the next level. They're part of that garnish package as well. Why? Because you get to go be with other people that are like you, that are going through the same things that you are. You understand you're not alone, and it kind of brings you into that mold to help you break up what's causing your burnout. But all of these are still not really filled with much substance, because even though you're in a support group and you're talking lightly, you really may not have the relationship with them yet, or maybe you do over time, but to get to the real meat of the situation. And so I want to show you the 3 things that are really important if we're making decisions about how to overcome or stay off the path to burnout. When we click on that more button, what should we be really looking for long term? And there are 3 really important things that we should be looking for. And this is the real substance in the sandwich. It is self-action, skill building, and resilience. And so we need to be learning and using measurable skills. If you've never held a family meeting and you don't know how to invite people to it, you don't know how to set up an agenda, work with your area agency on aging and other groups to help you learn how to hold good family meetings. Watch a YouTube video. You don't even have to wait for anybody. If you want to learn how to hold one at 2:00 in the morning, there's some really good little videos out there that are free that you can watch. We need to change something. The substance is about change, and it doesn't have to be anything big. We're going to show you a charcuterie approach to this whole thing, because I don't want you to look at this and say, oh man, I need to change everything right now. That's really not how this works. You will overwhelm yourself and cause more burnout. But if you can change one little thing, a perception or an ability, I now have the ability to call for in-home services. I have now learned to perceive that when my mom accuses me of something, she's not actually accusing me of anything. She's trying to figure out why what she's seeing is changed and so different. And since I'm the only person standing there, I'm perceiving that she is finding me at fault all the time. So we have to kind of learn how all this works. How to implement energy creating behaviors. And we're going to actually do that together today. That's going to be our little charcuterie approach. But nurturing values and talents. We all have things that are really close to our heart that are important to us, and talents. If you are a musician or a painter, or you love to golf, or you have other talents, and you have not used those in a long time, that also does what I want to say right now. We create an unintentional hunger zone and a condition that promotes burnout. We actually help create our own burnout because we have created hunger zones in our life. And this is a really important thing to start thinking about. You can say, where are my hunger zones? What haven't I done in a long time? How can I work with professionals to figure out how to get someone to sit with dad so that I can get away? We don't want to leave you in this condition. So let me talk a little bit more about now what. Do my choices to manage burnout lead to more? That's your question. Thinking about the hamburger model. And by the way, I have a PDF of these slides available so that you will have access to them on the website afterwards, so that you can have everything that we've talked about here. But the question is, do my choices to manage burnout lead to more? And if so, more what? And unfortunately, some people's choices lead to more burnout because we get too much in a hurry to take on everything at once, and we really shouldn't. It could lead to more tasks. And that might not be so bad if every third task you put in a respite or an energy building task. So you say, okay, I just did 3 things on my task list. I'm writing myself in, and I'm not allowed to skip it, because this is where I get my energy propeller going so that I can actually do stuff. Energy, is it leading to more energy, to more progress, to more skill, to more joy? So when you're clicking on your hamburger menu for life, and you're choosing coping skills, and you're choosing education programs to go to, and you're choosing services to come into your home, we want to make sure that you understand what clicking on that more button means to your family. And that's really important. So here's how we think about it from taking this as a one-by-one approach. It's instead of going to the buffet and trying to swallow it all at once and get your money's worth, it's stepping back and saying, what's the charcuterie approach? So I want you to imagine yourself looking at a charcuterie board, and here's one on the left, and eating a small amount in every savory bite that you really love. You could choose to eat 1, 3, or 6 items. Maybe you just want 3 grapes and a piece of Melba toast. Maybe that's all you want. But when you're full, you stop, because you know that that charcuterie board will be there safely waiting for you to come back for something else if and when it's needed. Now I want you to reverse that and think about how a lot of us grew up. Now imagine your parents making you eat every crumb on your plate just to get permission to get down from the table. I know a lot of you are probably laughing out there in the audience because you probably went through that. There was this one dish, and my mother knows how much her children hated it, but we got really good at pushing it around the plate to make it look like we ate a little bit when she walked over to do dishes, and then she'd excuse us. But yeah, that's the funny part of that whole memory, right? And so, but what that leads to is a thought, and that's bullet point number 3. A caregiver should not be required to sit through a 6-part education series just to learn the one skill they needed from chapter 3, paragraph 7. We need to approach this differently. I absolutely love a lot of the evidence-based training that is available for caregivers to attend, but I bet that less than 10% of any of our caregivers ever go to those programs because they seem overwhelming to think that it's 6, 9, or 12 weeks in a row. It works perfect for those that can give us the time. It is evidentiary. It's really helpful, like stress busting for family caregivers or dealing with dementia or any of those that you might go to. They're extremely helpful for those that have the time, but I know that most of you don't. So I want to talk about this from a little bit different angle. When you go out to learn something, you can learn 5 minutes on a YouTube video. You can ask a mentor to teach you something in a few minutes, and you can start recovering enough to want to attend the larger series. But until that moment, you're going to need little bite-sized nuggets to nourish you so that you can actually click on buttons and find more. So here's the little experiment I want to do with you today. So let's review 2 behaviors caregivers can control. So there are 2 simple little things, and I do this often with caregivers. There is something called an energy draining behavior, and I'm going to give you examples. And there is something called an energy building behavior. And if we don't notice in ourselves that we are continually creating energy draining behaviors in our daily routines, we are never going to be able to replace them with energy. We will simply be drained and drained until we are deep, very deep into burnout and have a hard time coming back. So here's energy draining behavior. I do not set good sleep boundaries. I troll on my cell phone until midnight trying to forget the challenges of the day. I am sleeping less than 4 hours a night. I look and feel like a zombie. So there is an energy draining behavior and its result. They know they're dragging in the morning when they get up. They hit the snooze alarm 10 times. They're always 10 minutes late for work. You know you're supposed to get up and take mom to a doctor's appointment, but you're having trouble even getting up. So that's the energy draining behavior that leads to burnout. Now let's flip the coin. An energy building behavior. I turn off all electronics at 9 p.m. I spend 1 or 2 hours reading a novel, meditating, or listening to music. My fight or flight seems to be relaxing, and my ability to sleep is slowly improving. So I know we can't always. Some of you who may have someone in the home with dementia behaviors that wanders at night, some of this may be a little bit harder for you, but if there's anything that you can do in changing the draining behavior, the trolling on the cell phone, over to no electronics at night, and this is just one example. You may not have this problem with electronics. Yours may be something completely different, but it gives you an idea of what we want to do. So I would like each one of you to have some homework after this conference. I think it's really, really valuable for you to do those things. So the charcuterie experience for you from this conference will be, I want you to think of an energy draining behavior. It could be I stop at mom's every single night and I really don't need to. She doesn't even want me there, but I do it because I'm nervous. So my energy draining behavior is I keep stopping. And what energy building behavior could replace it? The replacement might be as simple as I've set up a schedule with mom. I go Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. She calls me if there's any needs in between. And if you're really nervous, there's just a lot of things going on. You can put in cameras, there's other ways to do that so that you don't have to be somewhere every single night. Because I guarantee you, if you put too much on your plate, that you are creating that environment in which your own burnout is perpetuating itself, okay? So I want to look at a set of conditions here, and I want to make sure I leave plenty of time for a few questions at the end, but I want to look at these set of conditions again. And then I'm going to ask you some very, very important questions, because each one of us has to be realistic about where we are in burnout, and then we can maybe start to work forward and heal from what we're experiencing now, but also create a better environment in which the burnout is not perpetuating itself. So if you are in a place that you are mismatched, I want you to be honest about that and say, yes, I'm mismatched. I do not really value what I'm doing, etc. Just be honest about it. Even if you choose to stay in that environment, at least you've acknowledged that, hey, I'm mismatched. I'm going to have to do things to manage my burnout differently. Has there been an increase in your workload, both in caregiving as your care receiver is aging up and having more concerns, or as a professional caregiver and there may be shorter staff and you're really exhausted because you're running faster to appointments, etc. Do you feel a perceived unfairness or see a real unfairness in the conditions around you? And you'll just be going yes or no, and then you can start making notes in a journal or something to figure out where you are. And then your behaviors. Am I emotionally exhausted? Meaning, do I have whole body fatigue? Do I have some hits that I've taken that have never been managed? Therefore, I am not progressing and this isn't going to get better until I change something. Am I cynic about a lot of things because of what I've been through? And how's my personal effectiveness? I just wanted to bring us back around to that because they really matter to the next questions I'm going to ask. Here's our reality check when it comes to burnout. Do I currently show symptoms of burnout, and if so, which ones? And if you get this slide deck and you say, oh man, I'm going to go back and look at that whole body fatigue, and where am I currently showing symptoms? Is it physically that I take my greatest hit? Is it emotionally? Is it spiritually? Which part of me is really struggling the most? And start recording those and start being realistic about what you're going through. Question 2, do my values match my current workload or care load? And even if this isn't something you chose for yourself and you feel like it's something you need to do as the dutiful daughter or the gracious son, you can still acknowledge the fact that it's not what I would have chosen for myself, but I do choose to be a caregiver. It gives you a sense of power when you say, I still choose to do this. It helps take off some of the burden as well because you know it's your choice to stay there. Question 3, can I adjust my work or care load? If not, can I find support options that minimize the impact the load has on my capability and abilities? Maybe you can't adjust your care load from work or from your parent, especially if they're going deeper into chronic illness or other concern. Maybe we can't adjust the care load, but that just means we need a few extra people on our care team because we need to adjust something in order to take the impact this load is having on our bodies. Number 4, do I believe the system I work in is fair or equitable? And then the most important question ever comes after it. Am I willing to work in it even if it's not? And a lot of caregivers have to say yes to this. And acknowledging that and knowing the courage that it takes to say, am I willing to work in this even if it's not fair? Yes. And fair just means, is it equitable? Is everybody pulling their part? And you know what? Not everybody can. And if we run around trying to force other people, that's why Adult Protective Services sometimes get so many calls. We're forcing people to do care that they're not capable of, not willing to do, and they don't want. So we have to find other options for care that are safer than where we currently are finding ourselves. Because everybody's going into burnout, not only the caregiver, but the care receiver often as well, because they know that the person is not happy in providing that care. 5, are my personal wellness efforts enough to avoid or repair burnout? We need to start looking and saying, am I doing enough? When we talk about self-care with caregivers, it is a very powerful and very important structure. This we have to do in order that personal wellness to make up for everything that might be coming down the pipe with burnout. We need to have that self-care. It is the most important thing that any caregiver can do, professional, private, or otherwise. Family, friends, whoever's playing that role. Every single one of us needs self-care. We need that wellness. And it doesn't matter what it is, but when you click on that more button, be conscious about what that more is going to give you. And then 6, can I stay safely where I am? Do I have the wellness and the quality of life that allows me to stay where I am? Because it's not just the people we care for that need to be safe, we need to be safe too. I can tell you that I have seen caregivers that have passed away before their care receivers because they did not set this up properly. And even through the help of professionals and others trying to get them to minimize their load, they felt guilty if they did. And we tried to work on that even, but the person just couldn't let go. So if you are starting into that mode, it's really important that you reach out and talk to a professional or someone that can help you understand how to let go a little bit so that both of you are safe. The persons that are cared for and the caregivers themselves. And if you're worried about what people are thinking or how to do this, if you feel like you need to keep a care journal that says, I offered to do this for mom, she has refused me 3 times, keep those journals. That way, if anybody ever questions why you didn't do something for your parent, the guilt can be gone because you have this track record of everything that you've been trying to do, but it was not accepted. Other people have choice too, including your care receivers. So that's just some thoughts to think about. And then I've got one last slide. It's all about the direction. What direction are you going, toward or away from burnout? I want you to think about that as you're standing in the room and looking in the mirror tonight, brushing your teeth or whatever, and just say, what direction am I going? Am I headed toward or away from burnout? And just be honest about it and say, you know what? I've had trouble processing paperwork lately. I think I might be going into a little bit of symptoms of burnout. And then remember the number 1, because what one new possible action or perspective did you gain today that could shift your current direction? Was there something that really stood out to you today? And if so, write it down. Because I just want you to do one thing. We don't want you to add more burnout by trying too many things at once. There might be one thing you learn from this conference that is the most important thing for you. And then I love the new light bulbs that we get to use because it's for some very specific reasons. What will you do with what you learned today? And I want to talk about being Watt smart, because that's what this new light bulb reminds me of, being Watt smart. Having energy but not using as much as you used to. Storing it up for a use. Are you Watt smart? Are you making decisions, clicking on more buttons and getting more help and doing the things that you need so that you can preserve energy and make it through the changes that come on the daily basis with a caregiver? So if you are not Watt smart, if you are not storing up energy and aren't sure how to function with that, then by all means reach out to your area agencies on aging. They all have a caregiver support program. They all offer classes or coaching or something that can help you move forward the way you would like to. And they can get you in touch with other people out in the industry that can assist you as well. So I want to stop sharing so that we can get into some questions and anything else that you might have.
That's wonderful information, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a few questions, and I'm actually going to start out by pulling over a question that went into our last presenter from Adult Protective Services that I
Okay.
think rests really well here in your discussion. Because the reason that we wanted to have a discussion about caregiver burnout is because of the statistics of people who get into situations where they may be caring for someone, get over their head, and abuse or neglect may begin to happen. So this individual had asked, saying that they were caring for their mother. Their temper was becoming short and was wondering if there was something or some place where they could take this individual just to get away for a little while. So a caregiver location where they can take their loved one and so that they can get away from the situation for a little while if they're losing their temper. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about respite and what that is. And
Okay. First off, there's a number of answers to that. And some of it is really contingent on where you live in the state of Utah or wherever you're at. Some of the rural areas may not have some of the things that I'm about to discuss, but some of the urban areas might have a little bit more. You can, however, set up what I'm talking about personally. So let me just explain. There are things called adult day centers. If you need to send someone let me back up. If the person you have is cognizant and is able to care for themselves, they're just home a lot. You can try and reach out to your local senior center or find neighbors that are going, build up a friendship and try and get them involved socially with others. That's the first step. If they are beyond that, where they are not able to toilet themselves, other things, they may have a dementia and they can't go on their own, they could still go to a senior center if somebody goes with them. So if you hired a respite care worker, someone who could go with them and get them out for a few hours, then you could have some time alone on your own to function. Now, let's say you need a little bit more, or you want to go to a wedding or anything like that. You can check with your local assisted livings and stuff and see if they have a daycare built right into their system. Some of them are now offering that, where you can go to activities and stuff during the day that they're going to be naturally bringing up for all of their individuals that are visiting. But you could go and actualize that for the day. You could actually have your mom stay with them for the day while you get away. You can also just leave the house and hire someone to come in and spend 4 hours with her, building puzzles, watching TV, whatever, so that she's safe, so that you can just go. So there's so many levels to that. I just threw out a few. And they're part of the caregiver support program work that we do all the time. So yeah,
so the answer to that again is contact your local area agency on
Yeah,
aging to
definitely.
find out
Yeah,
what the resources are in your area.
because all the counties are different. And so we need to have you asking that county for specifics and what's available.
Right. So this is another great question. I'm nervous about attending a support group, even though I really need it. I don't want to sit and talk bad about my loved one. What can I expect if I go to one? What is the role of a support group?
Okay, a support group has a lot of functions, but one, it's camaraderie in caregiving. You're not alone. Our support groups, we run in a very specific way. We let the caregivers as a group tell us what their main subjects are. Sometimes we'll actually draw our stress out, talk about it and say, okay, what have we discovered today? Oh, all of us have these 6 things in common. Let's set up our next 6 sessions on these subjects because it's what you truly need in this support group. So it just depends on who's running the support group as to what it's going to be like. Sometimes you learn skills. You're not there to just talk about your woes. That is not a standard part of a support group. You get to talk, you get to experience things, you get to give your experience and ask for assistance so that other caregivers can tell you what they've tried to overcome the same thing. But it's not all about just talking bad about your mom as you're worried about. It's realistically talking about your care situation and finding resources and peer support and all of those things. We have some really fun ones here in Salt Lake County. There's a couple groups out in our South Valley that just love getting together and they have the funnest stories. So the camaraderie builds up and they miss each other when they're not there. Like, so, where's so-and-so? We haven't seen her for 2 weeks. I'm like, I can't tell you because, of confidentiality where she's at, but I'll ask her if she'll say hi and give you an update. So, we check in on each other, but it's really about a group of people getting together to find resources and support with each other. The modern day support groups are very different they're not counseling sessions, they're not coaching sessions. They're really support and resource sessions.
And that's kind of the feedback I hear from the attendees for the support groups in our area. It really is the relationships that they build and tapping into the knowledge that other people have they've gone through this with their loved one. And, how did you handle this situation? And
Right.
Tapping into that knowledge. And we even have people after their loved one has gone on and passed who continue to attend the support groups
Right.
because they've built that camaraderie and they're still able to share the knowledge that they had in caring for their loved one.
True, true.
So another question was along this line, how can I find a caregiver support group? It sounds really helpful.
Okay, we have a state calendar now that has a lot of stuff on it. If not, your county calendar for your AAA will be online. I don't have it memorized, but if I can put in the chat channel what ours is, if you're in Salt Lake County and you want to go to slco.org/caregiver, and anybody that's in a different county, Utah County, anybody wants to put theirs out here, there is a calendar button here. And the reason I'm just going to give you that one is if you go and hit the calendar button, it will take you to the statewide calendar that a lot of us are now using. And it will say Salt Lake County up in the top of it, but there's a drop-down box. So you can go to your other county right from that drop-down box. And so you can go there and find anything that's offered. We also have an understanding between all of us that if you need to go to something online, perfect, Wasatch Summit counties just pop theirs up there. If you want to go to that calendar at any time and you see that Five County down in the St. George area is offering an online support group and it's at the perfect time for you, you could still attend theirs. You don't have to go in your county of residence. The online stuff is friendly and open to any of us in Utah that want to, join. I actually have people come and find the stuff on our calendars and they'll call and say, my sister's in Salt Lake, but I'm in Seattle and my other sister's in Honolulu and my brother's in New York. Can we all join you? And I'm like, absolutely. Let's get in there together and have a lot of fun. Yeah.
And a lot of AAAs offer educational offerings for caregivers.
Yeah, they do.
And the same thing goes with that. We offer a lot of classes on dementia or stress busting, things like that.
Mhm.
And we welcome people virtually from other areas. And each of these area agencies on agings will have a website as well. So you can go look at the offerings all around the state to see what there is out there.
And your local libraries, don't forget those. Because a lot of times they have some wonderful classes and they offer free education through your library card membership, where you may not know that they offer free language assistance, language learning, or the old classes used to be under Linda, but I know that they're called something else now. But anyway, there's free classes of all kinds, and don't let your social media go to waste, because Pinterest has some of the coolest ideas on what to do as a caregiver, and Facebook offers some really cool stuff too. But your social media sites can have some really fun resource connections for you.
I'll also throw out there your local health departments sometimes as well offer classes for older adults that are really helpful, Tai Chi for seniors or, your senior centers as well. So there are a lot of options out there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your
You're welcome.
presentation and for your comments as well. Great information. So thank you again for joining us.